Well, hello and welcome back to the latest episode of my Love Machine podcast. Now, today I'm going to be covering a very interesting topic for some of you. It's called How to Heal Your Relationship. Now, since lockdown, there have been many breakups due to people being stuck together, thinking that they don't really want what they've got, they're not happy, they're arguing more. So I want to deal with the positive side of this, how to save your marriage, how to save your relationship if things have been going wrong. Today, I'm joined by a very special couple. I've got Jáchym, Jerie and Natasha, who are the creators of the Exceptional Relationship Formula, which is a unique process that removes drama from your relationship and brings back intimacy, love, and connection. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
I'm delighted to have you both here, all the way from Malaysia, you've just told me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
wow.
We are also affected due to COVID, so we were supposed to travel to Bali, but that got cancelled.
Oh no! When will we do that then? Maybe in a few months' time.
I don't know. It depends on what's going to happen with the borders. I mean, you can't enter Malaysia if you want to. Like if we were to leave, we can't come back.
And Malaysians can't
till December
leave the country either.
Wow, that must be tough. Over here in the UK, we've got a 10 p.m. curfew right now, which means you can go out and do things, but you're discouraged from going to work and you've got to be out of the bars and pubs by 10 o'clock. But that's absolutely fine for most people. So it's not really a big deal, but I think lockdown is coming again. Now, guys, I believe that you're a couple. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. How long have you been together for?
We've been together for 10 years and married for 6.
Great. And how are you finding things now since lockdown?
Pretty good.
Yeah. But for us, not much has changed because we run a business together, we live together, we train together. So we do a lot together, and that we have done that already before the lockdown. So the lockdown wasn't too much of a change for us.
That's good to hear. I think many couples that are strong already have thrived during this situation. They've embraced what's going on and they think, do you know what? It's an opportunity to get closer. However, unfortunately, many people have found it a bit of an issue. And you guys, you're coaches, aren't you? You deal with helping people save their marriages and having deeper connections. So can you tell my listeners exactly what you do and how you help people?
Right. So our main purpose is, you get into a relationship, right? And everything is great at the beginning. You're really like in this high, in the honeymoon, and you think it's just going to go forever. And some people marry in this kind of period thinking, we're a great match. We get married and it's just going to go on like this. And what people don't realize is that in a relationship, you do go through different stages. So you do get off the honeymoon eventually, whether it's 6 months, whether it's 2 years, it doesn't really matter. But eventually this kind of high that nature has given us so that we procreate as quickly as possible is going to wear off. And as it wears off, you are going to find yourself with someone that has different views than you, that has different lifestyle, that has different habits that you don't necessarily agree with. And at the beginning, they're charming. It's nice to have, it's so intriguing. But as you actually come off the high, they become annoying, and difficult. And you can find yourself in a power struggle where it's like, well, why are we not doing it this way or that way? Why do I have to wring the sponge? Why do I have to fold the sheets or whatever?
Why do I need all these cushions in my house?
Yeah, exactly. These kind of things, right? They kind of crop up. And so there's a time of negotiation and a time of finding how are we going to make this work really. And so what we help people with is going through that stage and not falling into the trap of compromising. Because when people start compromising, they compromise the relationship. So that the intimacy, the connection, it goes out of the window. Especially intimacy is usually the one that suffers the most, because intimacy thrives and sexuality thrives on having polar opposites, right? That you are different and that there is something intriguing about that. There's a space between you and your partner. And when you compromise, you start to make yourself similar to avoid conflict. And that's actually quite bad, because you want to have conflict, because that is when the friction is there. The friction is actually energy, right? And when you have that energy, you can grow together, you can learn together, and you're still going to be intimate with each other rather than being roommates. So that's really at the heart of what we're doing, because when you go to the next stage, when you make it through, the kind of power struggle, and not every couple is going to make it through that. Some, they just either start compromising, or they start living parallel lives, like as in they're in the same household, but they're more becoming roommates, or not even, that they just kind of live apart from each other. That's kind of what happens. And some just break up. I mean, that's another thing. Or they just settle for like something that's they're not really happy in it. And what people don't realize is that when you make it through that stage, is you can actually create something that's better than the honeymoon, because it is chosen consciously, right? You're choosing to be together, you're choosing to love each other, and you're choosing to do things for your partner because of that kind of love. And the depth, the fulfillment, the richness within the relationship just gets better and better and better. And for us, it's really something that lights us up. I mean, being together is really amazing. Is it all the time like that? Of course not. You still have your challenges that come up and all of that. But instead of being in the power struggle where you're facing off against each other almost, and it's like, well, what's in it for me? What can I get from my partner? You become what we like to call a synergetic couple, right? A couple where 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 + 10. It equals 100. It is exponential, because you put your energies together and you can create together, and it really becomes amazing. But it does require that you look at your own stuff, right? How are you relating in this relationship? What are you doing within this relationship? What are you projecting onto your partner? What kind of negative behavioral patterns are there that are actually draining you, that are disempowering your partner or yourself? Those are the things that you want to look at, because when you resolve them, then the energy is freed. Instead of being in a negative spiral, you start becoming to a positive spiral. It starts going up. And instead of the question of how am I going to survive this, or how is this going to work, it's going to be how good can this get? And that is really at the heart of the work that we do.
That's a really positive way to see things. How good can it get? Looking at what you could achieve rather than what you're not achieving at that point and getting frustrated by it. So how would you help a couple who find themselves arguing all the time now, bickering during the whole lockdown process and thinking, do you know what? I'm sick to death of you. You're always here. I can't escape you. What do I do? How can you make time for your partner if you're always together?
Yeah. Well, if there's bickering and nagging, and we personally have done this to each other in the past, and we no longer have this tolerance for it, like right now it's like, okay, that's not really helpful. It's not nice either, the one nagging and the one being nagged at. So how we help people resolve that, or how we resolve it too, is to not only communicate, like Jáchym said, about the sponge or hanging the towel or whatever annoying thing that it is that you want your partner to change or to be next time, is to actually kind of go beyond that. I think a lot of people get stuck on the same conflicts, no matter how small. It can be the dishwasher for years, right? But they stay on that surface conversation and that subject matter. And what people don't really quite get into is why it became a conflict in the first place. And most likely it became so sticky and more emotional and more charged over time because it somehow became personal. So for example, maybe one partner tends to do more of the household chores. And then the partner comes home, they're tired and kind of throws their stuff everywhere, or, tends not to clean up after himself or herself as much. And the person who does do more housework might see that as a direct, something negative against themselves, as not being respectful, as not valuing them, or not appreciating them. So there is something going on beyond the dishes or the sponge that hits you inside, like in your gut. But many people might not feel comfortable enough to actually vulnerably say that to their partner, or to share how actually I feel hurt. Like I know it doesn't make sense, but I feel hurt when like I make a dinner for you, or whatever it might be, that the subject matter, and like you don't say thank you, or when you just put stuff everywhere and after I just clear the table, whatever it might be. I actually don't like that. Like something in me really doesn't like that. And maybe you don't know why, but you can still communicate to figure out why is it a big deal? Why is it a big deal? What does it symbolize? And what are you trying to get? So the moment you change your partner, or he or she changes for you and they do what you want, well, what has changed? What have they shown you or proven to you through that change of behavior? So that's what you're trying to get from them, right? That change, something, so you can feel a certain, different reaction from that. So I feel like lots of conflicts and bickering just stay at that surface level, and many couples don't get beyond that because they're like, it clearly is about the sponge. So the question is it really? Can we go, a few steps deeper?
Don't you find sometimes that if you've been together for a long period of time, maybe several years, you do establish the same patterns of behavior and you do the same things and react to each other the same way? How do you change that? And how do you really get to the bottom of that after so long?
Right. Very good. I love that question because it is really a vital question to look at. And the absolute core of it is awareness, is consciousness. You need to bring consciousness into it, because the issue is when you don't, you have a lot of unconscious patterns that start to surface into the relationship. And those patterns are either learned from observing other people, they're learned through coping. Like, let's say, like I was master at this. Like, I get in my way when I become harsh and abrasive towards Natasha. And it runs a little bit in my family. And I was not aware of this. But here's the thing. When I get my way, the relationship loses. Like, I'm actually hurting the relationship through this kind of behavior. But I was unconscious of it until Natasha actually communicated what I'm doing. And I was like, oh my God, I'm spotting that in my mom. I'm spotting that in my siblings as well. This kind of like explosiveness that something comes out of nowhere. And it comes because I want my way, because I think my way is the right way. Right. And so consciousness is so vital. It is so vital to shine the light on it. And that means it means self-reflection, looking at how you're showing up, but it also means feedback from your partner. That's why honesty is so vital and important to have in a relationship, and not think I'm here to make my partner comfortable. Because if I'm just trying to make my partner comfortable, you start to put up with things that are not right for you and aren't right for the relationship, and they can be very destructive behaviors. They may start off small, but they can get bigger and bigger because you're not actually saying, hey, wait a second, what you're doing is actually hurtful. Like, this is not okay for me. So when you have consciousness, right, when you start to see the pattern that you're playing, and by the way, we do also seek professional help ourselves, because it is hard to spot some of those patterns yourself because you're in it and you're dancing it. So someone from the outside can be like, what are you doing there? Why are you reacting this way? So that's another way of bringing consciousness into the relationship. But once you have it, then it is time to actually, you can map it out. You can look at it and be like, okay, when am I becoming abrasive? What's happening? What are some of the trigger points? What are the 1, 2, 3 steps that we just do automatically? Right. And when you are aware of it, that is when you say, okay, and I'm going to choose a different way now. So Natasha is going to say something to me that I don't agree with, and I can feel the energy rising within me, and I want to get my way now. That's the time to pause. That right there is the time to pause and choose differently. And what happened to me, to make it a very clear example, is that there's the energy, it's uncomfortable, and I'm choosing differently. And instead of reinforcing something, I listen to Natasha. Now, at the beginning, it's a bit difficult because there's the energy. But as I listened, what then happened is I realized what she's saying has value and has importance. And maybe there's something in there that's actually true. So, remember about the sponge I brought up? That was me. That was me fighting Natasha. Saying, I don't want to ring the sponge, like, why do we do that? And she explained to me, like, you've got a point. I'm going to change it now because it makes sense to me. But it means you got to have the capacity to go through discomfort, because your ways are being challenged, and often our identities, like Natasha mentioned, are wrapped up in it. Right? So it feels like, come on, what's wrong with wringing the sponge? It's a neutral action. It really is. There's no big deal behind it. But for me, it was this big thing. Because it was personal. It was like, it's about me and my way is wrong and she's putting herself over me and controlling me and whatever, you know. So those are all the things that you need to look at to kind of give you a broader overview. But the heart of it is consciousness.
Excellent advice. I completely agree with you. Now, it says in your website that you've used all these techniques to save your own marriage on there. So the fact that you say that on the website, you probably won't mind me asking you, what troubles were you experiencing and how did you overcome them?
Mm-hmm. We already mentioned some of the things,
the
passive aggression. Yeah, the passive aggression, really, the nagging and the bickering and
blaming.
Yeah. And just
both of you doing this.
I was usually the one nagging and trying to change you to do something that I wanted you to do. And back then, you would do it. He would agree to do it. Like he would say, and then not. Or he would do it, but do it in such a way that it was unnatural. Like when you do something you don't want to, it is a bit weird, you know? Your whole demeanor, the whole body language is a bit strange. So then I would see him doing something and it wouldn't be quite right. And then I would comment on that. And then he would feel like I already gave effort in order to make you happy, but it's still not enough. And then he would go into a spiral where he didn't feel like anything he did was good enough. And then I'd be thinking at that point, this is going really downward now, that, well, he's freaking useless because he can't even do what I asked. It's terrible. But that's only one of those, dysfunctional patterns we had. We had other ones. For me, at the very beginning, even though I was a very talkative one, the most social of us two, I could talk a lot, but I couldn't, like I mentioned, like address conflict, address my feelings, address my internal experience at all. I could not put any of that into words. I was really unwilling to go there. And so that meant anything that bothered me within the relationship, I would just brush off. I would not share with Jáchym, or he would see that, something's not quite right. And he would have to ask and ask and ask until he got a little something. But even then, I wasn't quite on board to talk about it or to have these differences and conflict, because I never knew. I always avoided conflict growing up. So I didn't know how to even bring it up, or I didn't see the value in that at all. So actually, that whole pattern of the whole people pleasing and avoiding conflict over time, it led me to saying a lot of yeses, thinking that would give Jáchym freedom, that would give Jáchym happiness. So I was doing all these things because I thought that's what you did in a marriage. To make your partner happy, you kind of compromise and you do what you think they want. But in the end, as I said yes more and more to things I didn't want, I was getting my boundaries crossed again and again. And I was getting hurt again, consensually. I was consenting like, oh yeah, go do that, or oh, that's okay. And I was feeling so hurt. So at some point I hit this literally like a breaking point where I was so unhappy. Like I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't like the path we were on. I didn't like how I was feeling every day. And we kept on having the same conflicts where like I just break down into tears because I didn't know where to go from there. But I had to actually, at some point, very honestly say to Jáchym how I felt. And that was when something clicked in him. And he said, and he saw like emotionally how I was impacted. And then the change. Someone was really so hurt. Something really profound had to change for us to be together. Because I was really looking at the exit sign going, I can't do this. This is really making me unhappy. This is not the marriage I want. And I know I kept saying yes, but I have to say no for once. And I don't know how to do that because it felt like I was suddenly taking away all these privileges or whatever it is away from Jáchym. Like, what if he fights back? What if he doesn't want that for a wife or whatever? So I was scared that I lose him either way. So that was that low point in our relationship where we had to really figure out, okay, we don't like this. This doesn't work. What does? And we had to really go to the drawing board and find out what a healthy, loving relationship actually is.
And obviously you did achieve that. You're still together now, probably stronger than ever. And I notice, I can tell the two of you that you do give each other space. One of you speaks, the other one doesn't chip in and interrupt, as most couples do. You've obviously learned that skill, to listen, and it's so important that you do that. I think that one of the many reasons people do split up in relationships is due to unmet expectations. And I happened to notice this on your website today when I was looking at it, because I talk about this all the time. Because many divorces happen because people go into relationships thinking they're going to change the other person and that they're going to make these big changes and be a different person to what they expect. People don't usually change though, unless something really happens quite powerful. Do you agree with this? Do you think that's a common thing?
It depends. It really depends on the couple. And what I'm saying is not the statement about unmet expectations or unmet needs. I totally agree with that. That is totally true. The issue starts when we're not communicating them, right? When we are expecting that they somehow mind read and know what I want, you know? And it's like, no, they're not going to figure it out. And you nagging at them is not going to make them understand. It really isn't. Because what's going to happen is they're going to go into defense and try to get away from you, right? So you need to communicate in a way that's actually understandable rather than that feels like an attack, right? What I'm saying that I'm not sure, or it depends, is about people changing. And the reason I'm saying that is because I had profound change in my own life.
Of course.
And just to give you a little bit of background, I lost my dad when I was 6 years old. He committed suicide. And so that really impacted our relationship. It impacted how I viewed love. So for me, love unconsciously was something that was dangerous and that was going to lead to pain. And I didn't want to be hurt again, of course, right? And so that there was a push and pull dynamic within our relationship because I was afraid, because I was scared, because I didn't heal that part of me. And so I did change a lot in the relationship. Yes, there's certain personality traits or whatever that are the same, but there's also things that are very different. I'm a lot more lighthearted than I used to be. I used to be an extreme pessimist, understandably. And so there is the capacity for people to change, but it's not going to happen because you want them to change. That is not going to happen. It's going to happen because they feel pulled to change, because they are oriented towards growth. They do want to actually, live a life that is filled with joy, with happiness, and with love. And they're realizing they're not getting there with the current ways of engaging in the relationship and engaging with life, engaging with themselves. And so that if there is the initiative of wanting to change, whether it's through, some death or some external circumstance that pushes them to the edge, or whether they have a natural pull to want to explore life, to explore consciousness and the realms you can access through meditation and self-improvement and all the other things, then there is a chance that people will grow. But that in itself can also feel threatening in the relationship, because the person that you're looking at today is not the same person that you met. Right. And so relationships are challenging, and they're ever changing and ever growing, which is why you need to look at your partner with fresh eyes instead of pigeonholing them into, I know them, they just are like this and that. No, you really don't understand them. You really don't. That's your projection of your mind. So that's why I have a bit of a broader answer to that. And I do agree that, just because you want your partner to change and you're trying to make them change is not going to make them change. And if anything, is actually going to push them further away.
I agree. That's a great answer. Thank you. People don't know their partners as well as they believe they do. People have always got things in their closet or little secrets or things happen to them. They don't tell people. You're always learning things about them, and it should be constantly evolving every form of relationship. I found something out about my dad the other day. He died a couple of years ago, and I'm not going to reveal what it was. Nothing important. But I didn't know this. It's a big secret he kept from us, and I got told this the other day. It was a bit of a shock. It just shows even your parents or someone you're close to, you can find these things out and didn't know it. It wasn't really a bad thing, but it just surprised me. And even with your partners, you're learning about them. You should ask questions all the time. Get to know about them. Ask them about their childhood. Ask them things you haven't asked them before. What makes them happy? And it's constantly upgrading your relationships all the way through. Now, let's imagine you've got a couple who are constantly arguing, almost at the end of the line here, and they don't want to talk to each other. They don't want to try and resolve things. They're sat on opposite ends of the sofas, trying to walk out of the room to try and talk to each other. what is the very first thing that you'd say to them to try and get them back on the same page again? What is the one bit of advice you give them?
Right. So for me, one thing that I love to do is go back into the past. Okay, how did you meet? Why did you choose each other? Now, what are the memories that you cherish? And this is really for me also an assessment, actually, because if it happens that the current state is so poisonous or toxic that it has started corrupting your memory of the past, that happy memories you start to see in a negative light. And here's the thing about memories, just as a quick aside: every time you access a memory, you change it. There's no such thing as an objective memory or anything like that. It really isn't. And so, and I actually had a client back when I was doing hypnosis who came to see me. He was like, he had a horrible childhood and whatever. And I did some work with him. And after the work, he said, we never actually looked at his childhood, but after work, he said, my childhood wasn't so bad. You see? And so, you can have completely different perspectives on the same event, on the same memory. And what can happen with couples is that they start seeing their entire relationship in a very negative light. And if it goes that far, that even the so-called happy memories are always tainted, and the negative is highlighted, then we really think the relationship is actually quite in serious trouble, because the glue, what brought them together, is in the very question, right? It's not really there anymore. And I'm not saying that it is impossible from this place, but it is going to be very, very challenging. And what really needs to happen is that people start to see through the illusion of the mind, and that their thoughts and their memories and whatever aren't reality. Because when you can start to see through that, you can see your partner in a new light. If you can't do that and you are in such a negative place with each other, I'm not sure the relationship can work out.
Okay. So how would you give somebody space if you're locked down with them?
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah. There's different definitions of space. Like, one is the physical one. Like if you're lucky enough to have separate rooms and things, you can obviously give each other physical space. But a lot of the times, and I had to learn this personally, this might be a cultural thing because I'm Asian, Jáchym's European. I grew up with the doors open. I don't know, no reason to close the door. My mom still sleeps with the door open. Okay, side note. But anyways, personal space, didn't see the point of it, don't value it. When I moved in with Jáchym, I was like, what do you mean you need me to stop talking from time to time? Like, what do you mean I can't just buzz around you like a friendly fly? So no, so even this question to giving each other space is like, what kind of space do you need or your partner need? So one thing is, some people really need time to just recuperate, just to be on their own, reflect, just breathe without the presence of someone else. So that's a certain type of space. Another one is when you're completely absorbed in work, where you're doing something, where you're concentrating and you do not want to be disturbed. That's a different type of space where you're allowed to be you, do what you want, and be in your zone uninterrupted, because someone else is able to actually see what you're doing, acknowledge that there's value in what's happening in your world, and respect that that process needs to finish, or that there is something going on. And you might not necessarily want to just, come in with a random statement or a random question. So it really depends on what is it, like going back to needs and expectations. What kind of space do you need? And maybe what we're talking about here is that you give each other lots of space throughout the day, whatever, the different types that I went through. But you really spend quality time together, where you're really present with one another, where you actually are there, you're listening. So what is it that you need? And I think that's a good place to start, to ask yourself and your partner.
Yeah. Practically speaking, if you are in lockdown and you do have different rooms, of course, that is one option, as Natasha said. If you don't, another option is that you use headphones and that, you just simply communicate, look, I need an hour where it's just by myself, and I'm going to block everything out from the outside, because that is what I need to process things. I'm one of those guys who needs that. Like, we have an interview or we have a session or something like that, I need time to process it. My mind goes off and starts thinking about it. It just does it automatically. There's nothing stressful about it. There's only something stressful about it when I get interrupted with it, you know. And Natasha used to not look at me and realize that I'm not here. I'm processing stuff, and she would start talking to me and asking questions and sharing things. I'm like, I can't, like, I literally can't do this because my energy and my focus is somewhere else, right? And so it is important to recognize that your partner wanting space is not something bad. It's not something bad. People just have different capacities of socializing and being with each other. And if your partner needs space, they just need some time, you know. Now, yes, you can, of course, take it all the way into a direction that it does become problematic because the person is needing space because actually they are trying to keep the other person as far away as possible because they're afraid of the intimacy and the love and the connection. But I don't believe we're talking about this here right now. Otherwise, it is normal that you have different levels of needing space, wanting space, and so respecting that, communicating that, and realizing as well, if you are the one who needs space, that it's okay. It really is okay to ask for it. It's really okay to communicate it, and it's okay. You know, when you do that and you have a partner who feels a bit threatened by it, assure them. You know, just explain to them what's actually happening within you. Like, I had to sit Natasha down and be like, look, I'm getting out of the session. My brain just processes it and I can't answer you right now. It just doesn't work for me. I want to be with you. I really do. But I want to be with you when I can be with you. Not just be physically present, but actually listen to you because, you know, I love you. So giving me space or recognizing when I'm processing stuff is really helpful for me. And I would really appreciate if they could do that for me, right? So that is kind of an example of how you can communicate something to your partner and make it in a way that it is not personal, you know? Because the other example would be like, why are you always talking to me? Can you not just like be quiet? I need time by myself. Like, that is not necessarily helpful.
You're so annoying.
You're so annoying, exactly. That doesn't really
I've
foster.
got to ask, do you always talk during TV programs? Are you one of these people that always ask questions all the way through?
My goodness, that's me.
Yeah. My wife does that.
Comment on everything. Doesn't matter. One time, I think I was watching something by myself. My brother was somehow in the room, and I kept talking. He's like, "Seriously, you're even saying that stuff to me?" And of course, he doesn't even watch it. So he's like, "What are you doing? And who are you talking to?"
That can be annoying sometimes. I get that completely. But I think, going back to having space, I think it's important when you do have space that you come back out of it stronger and you've had a chance to reflect and to reboot yourself, and then you're going to miss them during that time. So absolutely, space can work whenever you can get it. Maybe to have a bath, have a shower, just go away, go for a walk around the block if you can, to keep yourself separate. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure having you both here today. We're coming towards the end of the time now, and I could just keep talking to you for a lot longer, but I do have clients today, so unfortunately I'm going to have to shoot off now. Before I go, if anyone wants to get hold of you guys and to find out more about what you do, or to save their own relationship, or to maybe generally find out more about you, how do they find you?
Absolutely. You can head over to yourexceptionalrelationship.com and then /understand. And on that specific page, you can actually get access to our little quiz. So you can, go through the questions. It's kind of fun actually, and figure out like, how are you communicating with your partner? Is there a bit of passive aggression you might not be aware of? Is there a bit of, nagging, whatever it might be, right? Getting that quiz is a good, place to start. And then once you get the results, you can we walk you through the 4 steps of the exceptional relationship formula. So that's the perfect place to go. Wonderful. Well, there you go, guys. Do check out the website. And if you'd like to get in touch, please do so. Thank you very much for joining me today. It was absolutely wonderful. I've learned a lot myself. And I'm going to take some of these tips on board for my own relationship with my wife and try and be nice to her today, at least for the next hour. Even nicer, I should say. Nicer. But thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespriest.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.